All right, guys. Pretty straightforward today. I want to talk about single event probability. This is the most basic kind of thing you can get out of probability. And all we're saying is that if there's one thing that happens, a single event, that we can make a prediction about the likelihood of the outcome. So there's a couple things you need to be familiar with before we get into this. I'm going to go over the basics, and then I'll show you guys a couple of different types of questions you guys need to know for the IXL um, challenge. So pretty much your overall goal is there is going to be the probability of something, right? So we'll start with something simple, okay? Probability of something. So this is the likelihood that there's going to be some outcome to your event, right? So let's say, for example, we had a coin flip, okay? In a coin flip, there's two things that can happen. The coin can land heads up, or it can end up tails up. Okay, those are your two outcomes. Okay, so there are two outcomes. If I said, what's the probability of getting heads? Right, I could say, what's the probability? What's the likelihood that you're going to get heads? Okay, and all that is this one right here, your desired outcome, which you want to happen. In this case, getting heads over your total number of outcomes. Okay. Well, in this case, how many different outcomes are there? There's two total outcomes, right? And your desired outcome, heads, is one of them. So you have a 1 out of 2 chance of getting heads, which makes sense. And you could say in this case, what's the probability of getting tails? Well, it's the same thing. Your desired thing is now tails. Well, how many ways are there to get tails? Just if tails ends up on the ground when you flip the coin, tails ends up. How many total outcomes were there? 2, right? And this makes sense. If you flip a coin, half the time it should land on heads, half the time it should land on tails. Now, that's not a guarantee. That's just what we would expect to happen, okay? What if we said rolling a die, right? Okay, so first of all, 2 are dice. Oh, I think there's a picture of dice. Dice. Um, 2 are dice, or 3 are dice, 1 is a die, okay? So if we rolled dice, okay, so let me interactive and multi, there we go, dice, okay? So if I roll a die, right, how many different outcomes are there, right? Well, if you think about it, and I'll kind of draw it out here, I'm sure I'm going to draw this out incorrectly. But if we think about it, there are 6 sides on a die, right? If we kind of like took it and expanded it out, there are kind of 6 sides on a die, right? You can get a 1, right? You can get a 2. I don't think this is actually drawn right, so excuse me. A 6, 5, 3, and a 4, right? There's 6 sides. One has a 1, one has a 2, one has a 3, one has a 4, one has a 5, and one has a 6. So when we talk about the probability of anything with this, right? Probability of something happening. Remember, it's your desired over your total. Hold on. So there's 6 total outcomes when you're move the microphone. Sorry. So there's 6 total outcomes when you roll a single die, right? So your probability of getting any of them, if I said what's the probability of getting a 1, right? In other words, getting a 1, well, that's 1 out of the 6 sides, right? What's my probability of getting a 2? It's 1 out of 6, right? 1 out of 6, right? There's 1, 2 out of 6 total outcomes. So again, the big thing you want is your desired outcome over your total number of outcomes. So again, if I said what's the probability of, let's say, less than 3? Well, how many numbers on a die are less than 3? Well, 1 and 2 are less than 3. 3 is not less than 3, so 1 and 2. So that's 2 out of 6. Okay. And again, we could talk about this. We'll talk about what we haven't talked about. That's turning this into a decimal or turning this into a percent, right? So if we want to say, hey, what's 2 out of 6 is a decimal? You take out your calculator, You turn it on, you say, what's 2 out of 6? Literally, 2 divided by 6 is 0.33333. If you wanted that as a percent, same thing we were doing yesterday, just multiply it times 100, okay? So this is 0.333 repeating, or we could say that's 33.3 repeating percent, okay? So again, there's all sorts of questions in Excel. What's even numbers? What's odd numbers? All of those other kinds of things. The big thing is this. What if I said, what's the probability of getting a 7? Right? Well, that's, again, it's the same thing we said. It's desired outcomes over total. Well, how many ways are there to get a 7 by rolling a die? There's no ways of getting a 7, right? So it doesn't actually even matter what the denominator is. It can't be 0 out of 6. That's just 0 or 0%, right? So there's some things that are going to be impossible, right? So again, if you guys want, you can break out some dice, and again, you can roll them and kind of see what happens with the outcomes, okay? Another thing you might see is a spinner. So spinners are very, very popular. So essentially what it'll be is it'll just be something round, and it'll be broken down into kind of different denominations, right? So if I broke it down into 4 parts, right, and I had a little spinner in the middle, right? So a spinner, kind of like playing the game of life, you'd spin this and it would go around, right? So we could say we have 4 sections. We have A, B, C, and D. So if I said, hey, what's your probability of getting section A when you spun your spinner around? Well, again, it would be your desired outcomes. How many A's are there? 1. Over how many spots there are? 4. So 1 over 4, which is 0.25, which is 25%. No big deal, right? The one thing you want to watch out for is, what if I did this? What if I said, now I have 2 A's. I have A here, an A here, a B here, and a D here. Now it changes. What's your probability of getting an A? Well, I still have 4 total outcomes I can get, right? But now, out of my desired outcomes, 2 of them are A's. So it'll be 2 out of 4, which is 0.5, which is 50%. Okay, so let's take a look at some examples. I'll kind of work them out for you guys. These are kind of things you should see on iExcel when you're doing this, okay? So, oh, I don't want to go to social studies. I do, but okay. So I take this, I'll lock this over here. This one in the middle. Okay, so they give this. You pick a card at random. What's the probability of getting a 3? Well, again, how many total outcomes? So again, it's always desired outcomes over total. Okay, well, again, your probability of getting a 3, your desired outcome is 3, right? So how many cards have a 3 on them? Well, just this one. How many total outcomes are there? Well, there's 3. So what's the probability of getting a 3? So 1 out of 3 chance. Right? You spin the spinner once. What's the probability of getting a 6? Write your answer as a fraction or a whole number. So again, your probability of getting a 6. Well, again, your desired outcome is a 6. How many 6s are in your spinner? 1. How many total outcomes are there? 4. So since they want it as a fraction, we will give it to them as a fraction. We'll say 1 over 4. You roll a 6-sided die. What's the probability of getting an even? Okay, well, let's think about it. Probability of getting an even. Well, a die has all the numbers up to 6. So what are all the numbers, all the even numbers up to 6? Well, 2, 4, and 6, right? So your desired outcomes, how many desired outcomes are there? There are 3 even numbers out of the 6 total sides of a die, right? So that one is a fraction. We could write 3 over 6. We should be able to write 1 over 2 if you want to reduce them. That'll probably be better if it will take 3 over 6. Sure. Okay. You flip a coin. What's the probability of getting tails? Well, again, your probability of getting tails. Well, how many tails are there on the quarter? 1. How many total sides are there on the quarter? 2. So what's your probability of getting tails? 1 over 2. Okay. I'll skip up a little bit. What's your probability of rolling a number greater than 2? Well, how many numbers on a die are greater than 2? Well, it was these year numbers on a die, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. How many are greater than 2? These 4 numbers right here, right? So we would say there are 4 desired outcomes over 6 total outcomes, right? If you notice, that is not one of your options here, so we need to reduce this fraction. So 4 over 6 reduces to 2 over 3. Okay. Again, here you got to take a look. How many odd numbers do you have? Well, I've got 3 is an odd number and 5 is an odd number. So that's, again, my probability of odd. Well, that's 2 out of the 5 numbers. Okay. They want us as a percent. So again, let's go ahead and we'll say what's 2. Turn your calculator on that. 2 divided by 5 is going to be 0.4 times 100 is going to be 40%. Okay, so I think that should get you guys all set to get started on this. I guess if you have any problems, you let me know and we'll take it from there. Thanks, guys.